for a giraffe learn Mystical Fire? I feel like it does.
Yeah, I would imagine, yeah, it's probably got access to something there, and we are getting straight into it, Ben.
It's Ogerpon, Half Flame, and Walking Wake out there for Yangtong, and a Gouging Fire and Amoonguss there for Joe. And this Gouging Fire is holding a booster energy, so after the Mold Breaker activates from that Ogerpon, we are going to see what boost this Gouging Fire has going to be opted for, and it's speed, that more common stat that Gouging Fire likes to run.
Yeah, and the Amoonguss is in a bit of an awkward position here because you've got that Half Flame Ogerpon on the opposite side of the field that is pressuring down some big damage, potentially a knockout with the Ivy Cudgel, especially if you see a terrestrialization here, and also with the Walking Wake having access to the Flamethrower as well. So looking like Joe maybe opting for a terrestrialization in this scenario, and could be risky if Yangtong reads into that because it does have access to grass-type moves alongside that fire-type Ivy Cudgel.
And it is a Terror straight off the bat, Lee. You called it perfectly there. The Amoonguss not wanting to take nearly as much damage from those big, powerful fire-type moves from the Ogerpon, but a clever protect here. Yangtong just not going on the offensive right away, just wanting to scout out whether Joe was going for a more defensive Terror option in this scenario. Rage Powder not going to redirect Gouging Fire or any of these protects on the field here, as a breaking swipe does land into both of these moves. With a speed boost, that Ogerpon would have taken an attack drop, which would have been pretty big, but instead Gouging Fire just gets a little bit of recoil damage from the spiky shield.
Yeah, a really smart play here from Yangtong in particular to kind of scout out to see if Joe, who was kind of pinned in that position, was going to react to that with the terrestrialization, and does follow through with it, of course. Now, the water type of Amoonguss, it is going to be weak to those wood hammers that the Ogerpon has access to, so has to be careful around that, especially again if we do see the terrestrialization here, and it nullifies potentially a breaking swipe that could come out from the Entei, which we know that is going to be faster than both of those Pokemon.
King Gambit, though, coming in from the Amoonguss, going to be resisting any grass-type moves that the Ogerpon wants to go for in this situation. And it's now Joe that's on the defensive with the Gouging Fire going for its signature move, Burning Bulwark. So a Draco Meteor follow-up from the Walking Wake would have probably been enough to pick up the KO onto that Gouging Fire. So a clever protect there on Joe's side.
Yeah, a really clever protect. And now the King Gambit on the field for him, offering some priority attacks here on things, but does feel a bit threatened by the Ogerpon. Obviously not a problem because Yangtong is switching that out, opting for the Torkoal to hit the field.
Oh, now we're powering up Walking Wake here. Its Hydro Steam is going to be going at full power in this turn if it wants to go for it. And of course, activating that Protosynthesis, getting the speed boost. We'll see that the training between these two, it's the Walking Wake that's able to go first, but Joe's Gouging Fire avoiding that Draco Meteor, able to get the big breaking swipe off. Not enough for the KO, but what a miss there for Yangtong. He's not going to be happy about that.
Definitely not happy about that. That is really unfortunate because now the Walking Wake in a position where the Sucker Punch from Joe's King Gambit is going to be in range to take that down. So it has to be really careful for that, and reason why we're seeing it retreat for later on. The Torkoal in a great position. Of course, it is going to be able to get a big fire type attack off on the King Gambit, which is threatened by that going into this next turn.
And Sucker Punch does indeed fail when a Pokemon does switch out, but it's not Sucker Punch that's going on this turn, just a Burning Bulwark again from the Gouging Fire, keeping itself safe from any attacks. And Joe kind of feeling out exactly what Yangtong wanting to do, also protecting with the King Gambit. And a good thing too, because that Eruption was the follow-up choice from the Torkoal. That would have done a lot of damage, Lee.
Yeah, it would have done a lot of damage to that King Gambit, potentially picking a knockup out. And the problem with the Torkoal is you've got two physical attackers on the field. The big draw of Torkoal is its defensive capabilities. You're going to be able to take those attacks pretty well. You can switch in the Amoonguss, just thinking about it here to kind of alleviate some of that pressure that the Eruption is putting onto the field right now. So we'll see if that switch does come to fruition here. But the Torkoal is something that you're going to have to really deal with quite quickly. We are seeing the Walking Wake switch onto the field in place of that Flutter Mane.
Yeah, lots of switches coming on from Yangtong, just trying to get into a better situation, especially after missing the Draco Meteor. You definitely want to make sure that, you know, it didn't go quite as well in that turn, but that doesn't mean that you're out of the game. You want to just make sure that you're getting your Pokemon in the right spot to be able to act in this situation. It's Torkoal, though, going on the defensive. A big Terra Fire coming out from it. And whether or not Joe has left it to be able to attack in this spot, it looks like it. But a Heat Crash going into that Walking Wake, not enough to pick up the KO. Quad resisted even in the sun, and it's a Heat Wave follow-up from that Torkoal, doing good amounts of damage to both of the trained Pokemon on Joe's side of the field.
What a huge survival there from the Walking Wake. You think, oh, it's on a tiny amount of health. It's probably going to go down to that big Heat Crash that was coming out from the Gouging Fire, but just enough to hang on, keep it on the field. But can Yangtong really adjust himself now? Because the Amoonguss on the field, it is putting a lot of pressure on that Terra Water. It is really resisting the Torkoal, so not going to get much mileage out of that. So I think the Spore is definitely a threat coming onto the field this turn for Yangtong.
And a Rage Powder coming out from the Amoonguss. The question is the Draco Meteor going to be following up from the Walking Wake? It is, but is it going to be enough to knock out the Amoonguss? Yes, it connects. It picks up the KO. A special attack drop from Yangtong's side of the field, but that Life Orb recoil is going to be taking out that Walking Wake. It's going to be going back to Yangtong. The question is, was this a breaking swipe, or is it Heat Crash into the Flutter Mane on the switch-in?
Yeah, it's going to be, it is a Heat Crash, and it's coming out into the Flutter Mane. Is it enough to pick up the knockout? No! One-hit KO here.
In the
Great
sun.
comeback from Joe to respond in taking the knockout from the Amoonguss, returning with a big knockout onto the Flutter Mane on the switch-in.
You can see how pivotal that Draco Meteor miss was in the earlier game. That Gouging Fire has really done so much work in this set, be it Breaking Swipe or Heat Crash. It's putting lots of damage onto the field, and Yangtong's kind of focused on doing damage with fire-type attacks with that Torkoal and the half-flame Ogerpon. Well, a Fire and Dragon type is quad resisting all of those damage dealing moves, and so it really was Walking Wake's job in that situation to be able to get that knockout.
Yeah, definitely, and you feel like the Ogerpon's got a lot of work to do to be able to get rid of the Gouging Fire, which just goes for that to protect this turn. The Burning Bulwark not going to take any damage, and the Kingambit doing the same as well. Joe quite smartly doing this because he is stalling out the Sun turn.
Yes.
As long as that Torkoal is sitting on the field, if the Sun runs out, then it means that Yangtong's in a position where he has to switch the Torkoal out. We know what's in the back, so it makes for the opportunity for Joe to kind of take advantage of that and take down potentially what could come out. Sorry.
No Pokemon in the back,
yeah.
Helping hand, though, coming out from the Torkoal, wanting to make sure this Ivy Cudgel is as strong as possible. After the Breaking Swipe, it's going to need to get a critical hit to be able to knock out this Kingambit potentially in one. If it gets it, it's definitely getting there. If it doesn't, this Kingambit's going to be taking a lot of damage, but a Kowtow Cleave as the follow-up, not enough to pick up the KO. You called it out earlier, Torkoal known for its physical defense.
Yeah, very well taken there, but the break and swipe is so useful in this situation, and the fact that you can't terrestrialize the Ogerpon, Joe managing the field very well, and you can see the battle forfeit there from Yangtong, and Joe taking an early lead in this game.
Very well played from both players there. I think Yangtong really had the early game at his command. And certainly the amount of damage or lack thereof that the Walking Wake took in that early game, able to get that speed photosynthesis boost to match the Gouging Fire, go for a big Draco Meteor in that situation, and unfortunately not connect. But that's the game we play, and I think Yangtong did such a good job to re-maneuver and try to get into a good spot, but that Gouging Fire was just too much on Joe's side.
Yeah, and I think if you are Yangtong, that is the Pokemon that you need to remove from the field to start kind of getting that momentum swing in your favor, because really when you look at the options that he's got elsewhere on his team, you're looking at Flutter Mane, not really the best option to sit in front of the Gouging Fire. You're not going to be able to do damage to it with anything like a Fairy type attack, especially if you're locking yourself into one of those Moonblast or Dazzling Gleam moves, of course, because you are holding the Choice Specs item. And then you look at the Ogerpon, it hasn't really got any coverage to hit Gouging Fire. Torkoal's going to struggle against it as well, so you're really relying on the Walking Wake, if that is something that you bring to this match, or something like the Raging Bolt as well. Both are going to take a good amount of damage from the breaking swipe, but the gouging fire was just constantly doing that game, to keep things like the Ogerpon in check if it did come onto the field in case of the Terastallization from that Pokemon.
The trouble is, and you're right, you're absolutely right, the Walking Wake is the quick way to knock out that gouging fire. A Fluttermane could probably do it, but you need multiple turns locked into Moonblast. We'll have to see if the way that Yangtong has adjusted in Game 2 to be able to deal with that. It's the Walking Wake and Ogerpon again that he opted for. Joe mixing things up a little bit. Yeah,
mixing it up, and I think rightly as well, because I think the Ogerpon gives you a bit more support against what the Walking Wake kind of pressures onto that gouging fire, because it's got access to the Follow Me. You've got a good way to potentially put some good damage onto the field as well with things like the Horn Leech, keep yourself healthy, and then, you can also throw in a Spiky Shield here and there just to make sure that you are kind of taking advantage of the gouging fire as best as possible, because you have to really, if you're keeping on the field for a long time, you kind of have to time when to use the Heat Crash correctly and when to use the Breaking Swipe, which I think was really highlighted in that last match in Game 1 by Joe. He was going for the Breaking Swipe when it was pivotal to, and then really key moments where you saw the Fluttermane switch in, going for the Heat Crash, catching the Fluttermane on the switch in and removing it before it came any sort of issue in the late game.
What's fascinating about this particular matchup, and certainly the team that Joe's been running, is a lot of the ways that trainers opt to play this team is by really utilizing the Howl option on the gouging fire alongside the Burning Bulwark. You get a little bit of a attack boost on both of the Pokemon on your side of the field, including, of course, the gouging fire. That makes a big impact into your damage output with both Breaking Swipe and, of course, Heat Crash. But also, if you're powering up something like a King Gambit and it's going for a Kowtow Cleave afterwards, well, your opponent's not going to be appreciating that either.
No, especially when you look at Joe's team and that King Gambit's holding the black glasses. It's already boosting its Dark-type attacks a little bit further, and then, I think you look at the other options on his team, like the Dragonite you've got is a physical threat, the Ogerpon is a physical threat, and then the Chen Pao is a huge physical threat that not only would benefit from the Howl, but would also benefit your Howl as well with its sort of rune ability.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the big thing that I think why trainers are opting for this sort of team, because you can play Gouging Fire against most Pokemon. It's a reasonably bulky Pokemon. You get the booster energy on the speed, you've got powerful attacks, you've got support with the Breaking Swipe, and then pick your physical attacker partner, and you can decide, depending on the matchup that you're going into, which one of those Pokemon really best suits the scenario. Yangtong on the other side, though, I do want to call out actually the training on Yangtong's team, because the Ogerpon and the Fluttermane and the Walking Wake both get the Photosynthesis boost in their speed. And I think that gives this sort of matchup, the archetype that Joe's running, a real run for its money, where, well, actually now Gouging Fire isn't the strongest or the fastest Pokemon on the field. Instead, the Walking Wake is, and there's no form of speed control that Joe has access to.
Yeah, and I think if Joe, if we do see the Amoonguss again, it's, if we're sticking with what we saw in Game 2 there, mixing it up, we saw the Ogerpon as the option opposed to the Amoonguss, because probably didn't do as much as what Joe would have liked it to have done in that Game 1, and made it a bit awkward where he's in that scenario. Do I Terastallize it turn 1, or do I potentially lose this Pokemon? Opting to Terastallize it was obviously the better play there, so it meant he kept his numbers up. But I think if you can go for the Terastallization maybe on something like the Gouging Fire, it could give you a little bit more of an advantage, because if you look at it, it is a Fairy Terra type. The Walking Wake, the big thing that it was going for was that Draco Meter to try and remove it when the sun was on the field. Like you say, the speed boost to that with the Photosynthesis ability does allow it to kind of get in that position where if you are able to throw a Draco Meteor onto that Pokemon, it is going to do a lot of damage. Whereas if you've got the Terastallization still spare, it gives your opponent something to think about. Am I confident going into this slot if Terastallization is still active for Joe? Because he can't easily just go for that Fairy Terra typing, especially now knowing what Yangtong is going to try and follow through with his strategy to get rid of that real troublesome Pokemon. And I think the other thing that you highlighted really well was the fact that the speed boost is the stat that is going to be happening when we see the sun on the field through that photosynthesis ability. But it really makes it difficult to bring something like, for a Giraffe, into this game to utilize something like Trick Room. Going to benefit the Torkoal like to no end.
Yes.
But with the other Pokemon, when they come into the field, if the sun's up, if you are using the Torkoal, it's going to put you at a real disadvantage. So it makes it a very difficult matchup for Yangtong. And I think Joe's doing very well to identify some of the holes maybe against his team and exploiting them in this game.
I think you make a really good point there, and I just want to extend on that, because I think that's the reason in game one that we saw lots of protecting happening. Certainly in the early game, where we saw a double protect from Yangtong turn 1, we saw a double protect on turn 2 or 3 from Joe, and several more after that, where these trainers know how kind of sharp the matchup is in terms of the decisions that they've got to make. You mentioned about the Fairy Terror stopping the Draco Meteor on the Gouging Fire if you've got that spare. Well, Joe didn't have it spare in that scenario, so it was safe. But was it really safe overall? You know, the Gouging Fire could have switched out into the Amoonguss to take it, and then you could have seen a lot of other different scenarios coming through. So I really liked how these players understood that was the matchup that they were playing, and therefore decided, hey, I'm not going to go all out straight away. I'm just going to edge through the match, play a little bit more carefully, and then decide on, after I've seen how my opponent's going to react, how I'm going to react to that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what makes these game 2s really pivotal, really exciting to watch, because has one trainer figured out a strategy against the other to close this up, tie it up, and take it to a game 3? That's the big question on everyone's minds going into this one. I think it's a very tight matchup where it could go either way depending on the choices that each trainer brings to this match.
And this match is now getting back underway by the looks of things. We're getting into turn 1 of game 2 here in round 6 of the Liverpool Regional Championships. Joe leading out with Ogerpon, Wellspring and Gouging Fire. It's Ogerpon half flame and that Walking Wake, the lead again for Yangtong.
Yeah, I do like the Ogerpon Wellspring form here for Joe, because like I've mentioned before, I think it offers a little bit more than the Amoonguss was. I mean, the Amoonguss had the ability to pressure with Spore, but it was forced in that first turn to Terastallize. And if you are wanting to really benefit from the Terastallization completely, you want to wait and see how the game plays out before locking into that.
And it's the Torkoal going to be joining the field yet again, getting that sun on the field, getting that photosynthesis activated for the Walking Wake. Gouging Fire going on the defensive, going for its Burning Bulwark defensive option. Spiky Shield as well from Joseph. Again, that defensive play that we were just mentioning there. Draco Meteor, Yangtong deciding this is the turn that I want to go for it. Going into that Gouging Fire, but not connecting through the Protect.
Yeah, no, I think, again, just testing out what's going to happen, just kind of getting a feel for the match, see what Yangtong's going to do from Joseph's end, not really wanting to overcommit to anything turn 1, take it easy, make a decision turn 2. I think now that you can see that the Torkoal's on the field, the Walking Wake's in a position where it is going to threaten this next turn with the Draco Meteor, it makes this decision a little bit easier for Joe, where you can maybe go for the Terastallization with the Ogerpon like we've seen him lock into, get the Embody Aspect ability active, get the special defense boost. It's going to allow you to take that attack a lot better, and in particular you're going to be able to soak up the damage from that Torkoal easier as well, because that's really essentially going to probably fire off an eruption. But either the Gouging Fire or the Wellspring Ogerpon really mind about that.
Now going for its Terror, getting that special defense boost from the Embody Aspect. And yeah, Eruption not going to be causing too much of a problem here, but it's a helping hand coming out from the Torkoal into the Walking Wake, going to be boosting up the damage from that attack. But Ogerpon says, hey, you're going to be launching that Draco Meteor, launch it over here. I'm going to be able to take that like a champ, not get the knockout there. Walking Wake taking a little bit of Life Orb recoil and a lot more damage from the breaking swipe there. Torkoal going to be the last Pokemon. Oh no, went for the Helping Hand. So
yes,
yeah, just the Draco Meteor into that Ogerpon.
Yeah, the Helping Hand really showing how useful it can be there to boost that Draco Meteor. I mean, the Ogerpon's taking that really well, but is going to be in a position where it is going to be potentially knocked out this next turn if we see a repeat of the last one. And I think if you are Yangtong here, you can potentially just go for the Draco Meter Helping Hand into the Gouging Fire here. And punish the turn to say if we see the Ogerpon go for a Spiky Shield. We are going to see another turn of Helping Hand, Ben.
And it's going to be into, of course, that Walking Wake, but Joe seeing right through it. It's a follow me onto the Ogerpon, just making sure that the Gouging Fire is not going to be taking any more damage this turn. Ogerpon goes down to that Draco Meteor. 2 connections in a row this game. Ogerpon going back to Joe. That's the follow me down and out. It's the Terror down and out in this situation, but Walking Wake has taken a lot of damage there. It's going to be the Breaking Swipe coming out, enough for the knockout on the Walking Wake. That is Yangtong's best option for dealing with that Gouging Fire down and out.
Yeah, so if you are thinking like in game 1 where you want to protect the Gouging Fire from the biggest threat on the field in Walking Wake, well, Ogerpon, the Wellspring form, has done the job exactly like that for you, making it really in a position where it is going to be able to get those Breaking Swipes off pretty freely now, weaken the Ogerpon. The only thing that you would say different about that game 1 is Yangtong has access to the Trustalization now, maybe not going for it on the Torkoal, maybe going for it on the Ogerpon. The Chen Pao comes onto the field. It is going to have that sort of Rune ability, support the Gouging Fire a little bit more this turn and opting for that Protect.
Making sure that it's not taking any more damage this turn, calling the Spiky Shield on Yangtong's side, making sure that half-lame Ogerpon is not taking any damage. But Joe going for the Howl, going to be getting an attack boost on the Gouging Fire, but more importantly on that Chen Pao. Heat Wave, the follow-up, of course not doing any damage to that Chen Pao, but things are not doing any damage to that Gouging Fire really either, and it's looking like a really uphill battle.
Yeah, it really is looking like a difficult one to close out now for Yangtong to get any sort of momentum here with that Howl there. Obviously onto both it and the Chen Pao, just boosting that attack on both these physical threats, making it difficult, especially when your only option to hit the Gouging Fire is going to be a fire type move. Realistically, you can't really lock in with a grass type attack into it. Yeah. It's going to be doing negligible damage. So getting another Spiky Shield though, protecting
double
for
Spiky Shield though coming
turn
out from this Ogerpon, and it's going to be making sure that it's not going to be going down to a combination of Breaking Swipe and whatever the Chen Pao wants to go for in this situation. But we might see the Focus Sash get broken on the Chen Pao and the Torkoal able to knock it out with a Heat Wave. But it's an Ice Spinner follow-up, not enough to pick up the KO. Joe targeting perfectly here, not into the Spiky Shield, taking a Heat Wave, and it's the Focus Sash making sure that Chen Pao survives the turn.
Yeah, really, really good turn here from Joe. And Yangtong really, I think, going for the only option there with the double Spiky Shield, allowing the Torkoal to get some big damage onto that Chen Pao, importantly breaking that Focus Sash and showing off its defensive capabilities, taking the double up from both of these boosted Gouging Fire and Chen Pao going into this turn, but looking like it will go down with one more attack, and it doesn't really help out with the Ogerpon here. Can Terastallize still, it can get some big damage off, but we are going to see Torkoal retreat.
And coming in is probably going to be that Fluttermane, I would say, as the Pokemon. Yes, it is. Fluttermane coming in. Doesn't have the Photosynthesis boost because that Sun has left the field. So Torkoal will have an opportunity a little bit later on to come back and set up the Sun in Liverpool here. I'd like a Torkoal in real life right now because it's a little bit chilly out there. But Ogerpon going for the Terror that you just mentioned there, Lee, and getting the attack boost. That's going to mitigate some damage from this Breaking Swipe and allow it to continue to put damage onto the field. But after the Howl, that Breaking Swipe does so much damage, boosted by the Sword of Ruin. Icicle Ice Spinner coming into that Ogerpon. It's not very effective, trainers, but with that boost, with the Sword of Ruin, it's enough to pick up the KO.
That's a huge turn for Joseph here with that Breaking Swipe. Not normally a move that does so much damage, right? But with that Howl boost doing so much and then followed up, really smart play. I mean, it was pretty obvious that the Ogerpon had to attack that turn if it was to stick around in the field. So picking the easy choice, making sure you get rid of it. Breaking Swipe covered the Torkoal there because it would have picked up the knockout onto it. Now in a pretty awkward spot, Yangtong, as we do see lock in with Joe taking this set 2-0.
What a way to take it as well. That really shows off the power of Howl